is in and of itself symptomatic of our confused obsession, fascination with the word innovation. An unbiased look at innovation would say that society views innovation in the same way that biology views mutation. So let me try and define innovation in a simple sentence for us folks, us entrepreneurs. Innovation is the process by which an idea or an invention, innovation is the process by which an idea or an invention is transformed, or let's say mutated, into products and services that people will pay for. So how does one go about innovating? Let me try you with a little story. There was this priest, and he needed a bell ringer. Another guy who gets up to the top of the church and then rings the bell. And he had advertised for one, and the ad was answered by a guy with no hands. And the priest says to this fellow, he says, "You can ring a bell, you have no hands." He said, "Let me show you." He walks up to the top of the tower, takes a running leap, hits the bell with his head, and produces the most beautiful tone the priest has ever heard. However, that knocks him out, he falls to the ground and dies. Stunned onlookers rush up to the priest and says, "Hey, who is this guy? Do you know him?" He says, "No, I really don't know, but his face sure rings a bell." I'm supposed to laugh, guys. Because people laugh at jokes at the end of the joke, not at the start. Why? Jokes only make sense in hindsight after we've heard the proverbial punchline. We have no context to start laughing at the start of a joke. Once we hear the final line, our mind works its way backwards, and we make sense of it. We laugh. Ditto with innovation. There is a famous quote, and I guess I forgot who said it. You know what they say about getting older? Memory is the second thing that goes. I forgot what the first was. Back to that famous quote. Innovation is an abstract concept. And an abstract concept remains abstract until our mind works its way backwards to make sense of it. So voila, just as one does with a good joke, the ability to see value in hindsight is a crucial skill for an innovator. So what about this innovation? What kind of process is it? Well, innovation is not an invention, but it could be. Innovation is not an idea alone, relying on special skills of an individual, but it could be. Innovation is not a brilliant spark, a flash of genius, an epiphany, but it could be. Innovation is not always random or unpredictable, but it could be. And innovation is not oftentimes a spin on an existing or new product, but it could be, just like iTunes was on Napster. True innovation is what separates the pet rock from Leonardo's mobile cannon or Thomas Edison's electric light bulb. True innovation is what separates the Cabbage Patch doll from Fleming's discovery of penicillin and Jonas Salk's discovery of the polio vaccine. True innovation is what separates the Rubik Cube from McCormick's Reaper or Steve Jobs' iTunes and iPhone. Innovation serves as the catalyst to unexplored opportunities all across all fields in society, lighting a beacon for us entrepreneurs, particularly during troubled times, because the rest of the world only sees trouble and turbulence, and the opportunities are clearly visible to the entrepreneur. One thing is certain: entrepreneurs innovate. They just do it. This is as fundamental to our universe as Newton's 3 laws. Not everyone, though, I would contend, and I would contend that based on my anecdotal, unscientific research, not everyone is or can be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are endowed with what I call the entrepreneurial gene, and it's really not a gene because you don't inherit it. It's a virus. It's spread randomly, kind of like butter on toast, all across all facets and fields of our society. It's gender agnostic, it's country agnostic, it's culture agnostic, it's color agnostic, it's religion agnostic. Think about it. Think about all of the people you know, your friends, your family. Some are entrepreneurs, most are not. A good example is my own family. I have 2 brothers, brilliant, far more brilliant than yours truly. One of them's a brilliant doctor curing diabetes. The other one's a PhD in artificial intelligence, has worked for Siemens for 25 years. Risk averse. They both live in the US, all 3 of us do. They drive on the highway at the exact posted speed limit, 55 miles an hour. Not 56, 55. Me, I have 2 radar detectors in my car. One for the front and one for the back, just in case. And we're all brothers, not inherited, randomly spread. So why is the level of entrepreneurial endeavor different in different regions, different cultures, and different countries, if it is as a result of this randomly, evenly distributed virus, which you either have or you don't? And the answer lies in 2 reasons. One is their environment, their culture and their traditions and the pressures that come from that. And 2, their government, institutions. These 2 factors either allow that virus to flourish, grow, and expand, or they squash and kill it. Because for entrepreneurs, institutions matter. As much as we'd like to deny it, institutions matter. It is government that creates these institutions, these public structures that support innovative entrepreneurial ventures. They set the playing field for entrepreneurs, as well as big business. Government creates the laws that define what business even is, and then they use their police and their courts to enforce these laws. They negotiate trade agreements that allow entrepreneurs and businesses to sell across country borders. They provide the infrastructure, that is the fertilizer in which business can either thrive or wither and die. And it is only government that can put a process of accountability into place. Entrepreneurs and their investors need organizations like SEBI and others to mandate consistent standards of financial reporting and to police the integrity of these financial reporting systems. And even more importantly, entrepreneurs need the opportunity to exit. And for that, you need freely traded stock markets, reliable and open banking systems, and honest court systems. The rule of law is essential because you need to protect your intellectual property, and an uncorrupt court system is essential to preserving the sanctity of contracts and financial covenants while also being able to provide swift redress if some fraudulent activity takes place. But the real paradox is, after we have structured all of this that government needs to do, once government has done that, it isn't very good at getting the hell out of the way, which it needs to do. And it needs to then allow entrepreneurs to operate, particularly when times become more turbulent. In fact, India is not the only problem. Most countries around the world are saddled with arcane, mind-numbing, stupid regulations that inhibit business and take forever to redress obvious, blatant wrongdoings and contractual defaults. Even the most developed of countries screw things up, making it difficult to register property, protect intellectual property, and obtain the necessary permits, etc., to get businesses going. The World Bank, every year, does a study of 183 countries. They call it their Doing Business study. They rank countries from 1 to 183 in how easy is it to do business in, which is essentially meaning how entrepreneur-friendly are these countries. They look at a variety of factors like the difficulty in registering a business, obtaining permits, getting electricity, court systems, resolving bankruptcies, and a host of other relevant issues. In the 2012 report just recently published, France, a developed nation, ranks 149th in the world in the difficulty of registering property and 79th in the world in protecting its investors. That's a no-no, folks. Hope you all turned off your cell phones. 79th in the world in protecting investors, while it ranks 29th overall, not because it's so great in other things, but because it's got a pretty uncorrupt court system, so that's why it improves. Even Germany, economically, the powerhouse of these last 4 years, these turbulent times, ranks a lowly 99th in registering property and a 97th in protecting investors. India, well, we come out very lousy in this report. We're 132nd in the world, and we're in pretty bad shape in almost every category. So really the conclusion from that is that Indian entrepreneurs and Indian businesses is succeeding in spite of our government, not because of it. The United States, on the other hand, ranks 4th overall in the world and would have even ranked higher than that, but for its very complex corporate income tax system. But where the US ranks number 1 in the world is in its venture culture, the use of private capital for startups. Angels invest around $27 billion a year, And venture capitalists invest about $33 billion a year in startups. This is just over the last 4 years on an average. So that's a staggering $60 billion a year of private capital fueling the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the United States, which is really a testimonial to the validity of the government institutions that have been put in place, where people can trust the fact that their money is being deployed properly without interference. Anyone want to take a guess at who the #1 country was? Singapore. Yes, you go to the head of the class. You are in the head of the class, in the front row. Singapore. Singapore is ranked as the most entrepreneur-friendly country in the world. So one might ask, why is it not the most entrepreneurial country in the world? Because it's certainly not. Well, the Singapore government is doing all it can to promote entrepreneurship. But Singapore's cultural environment, an environment and tradition that celebrates safe and stable careers rather than risk-taking, as well as the disgrace and stigma that is associated with failure, pushes young people away from taking risk. Sound familiar? Asian and Western European societies, in particular, have a way of suppressing this entrepreneurial desire due to its millennia-old cultural, hierarchical, feudal structure. Working for a big, stable company like Reliance or Tata's or Siemens or Singapore Telecom is celebrated. And working for oneself, one does as a last resort when one is unemployed. Sounds familiar to me because I grew up in India, but then I went to the United States, and at the age of 40, I had the epiphany, and I started my first venture. My family thought I'd gone crazy. I'd given up this great job, wage slavery, but well-paid wage slavery, to go start something on my own. They thought it was a passing madness, and I would revert back to wage slavery in just a few months after I realized the error of my ways. So this culture that exists of excoriating failure instead of celebrating it inhibits risk-taking and pushes young people away from innovating and starting businesses. Instead, they go on to join big, stable companies, hope to survive a career there, suppress whatever entrepreneurial desire they may be endowed with, if they're part of that 3%, and live their lives like caged animals. Let's face it. Whenever the world has been in trouble economically, it's been the entrepreneur that has come to the rescue. It is the entrepreneur that has fought their way out of those turbulent times. Indisputable case. Soon after the U.S. Civil War in the middle 19th century, the entire world was in terrible economic doldrums. And it was entrepreneurs, legends we make movies of, that came to the rescue of the world, sparked the Industrial Revolution and ignited an incredible economic boom, rescued the world's economies during those very turbulent times. Risk takers, game changers, innovators. The list is long. Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, the Wright brothers, Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, Henry Ford, Cyrus McCormick. You can just keep naming them. Fueled their startup ventures with far-reaching ideas. They started small. All of them started in their barns and workshops. There were no garages then, otherwise they would have started in their garage as well. And they grew their businesses with very innovative ideas and products, changed our lives. And if you think about all the names I mentioned, their companies are today Fortune 100, Dow 30 component companies. Started small, became huge. Entrepreneurs. They were not large companies when they started. Similarly, after the end of World War II, when again the world was in a dumper, it was legends in their own time who came to the rescue, sparking the microprocessor revolution. Steve Jobs with Apple, Bill Gates with Microsoft, Sam Walton with Walmart, Fred Smith with FedEx, Bill Noyes with Intel. I would even put Ted Turner with CNN into the list. They changed the way we live. They even helped bring down the Iron Curtain, arguably. India is also a pretty good example of where once we were on the verge of bankruptcy, 20-some years ago, just about. And Indian entrepreneurs pulled us back from the brink. Sure, Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh, Prime Minister and Finance Minister, had something to do with it, with loosening up the rules. But it was people like Dhirubhai Ambani, Narayan Murthy, Sunil Mittal, Azim Premji, who took advantage of these little windows of opportunity and pulled India back from the brink of bankruptcy and now set us on a path to economic progress where we have become an economic juggernaut of sorts. Coincidentally, it was around the same time, 20-odd years ago, where in the United States, a group of successful Indian-American businessmen came together to form TiE. They had faced a lot of tough times, because remember, back in those days, India was not cool like it is today worldwide. It was a land of snake charmers and elephants. And if you were from India, you were a nerd. But these guys had built successful companies, had broken glass ceilings, had overcome obstacles, and decided to come together to give back to aspiring young entrepreneurs so they could avoid the mistakes that they had been made. And from those humble beginnings 20 years ago, today TiE is synonymous with entrepreneurship in 17 countries, and is certainly synonymous with entrepreneurship in Nagpur. I would argue that TiE even helped change policy in India. Very effective lobbying of the Indian government by a couple of stalwarts from California helped change our laws of telecom, liberalize those laws.